I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest is someone who's changing the game in sports medicine. Stacy Case is the CEO and founder of Sideline Surgeons, a platform built on one clear belief: athletes deserve better care no matter where they play. She's also a managing partner with a background as a registered nurse. Through Sideline Surgeons, Stacy has built a nationwide network of top sports medicine doctors, helping athletes get second opinions, transfer medical records, and stay healthy through every stage, from high school to the pros. But more than that, she's on a mission to make sure athletes never feel alone in their recovery. She's all about connection, advocacy, and making sure someone always has your back. Stacy, welcome to the show.
All right, welcome everyone back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Gabe and Lexi. We're so excited to be introducing Stacy Case. Hey, Stacy, how are you?
Great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing awesome. We're doing awesome. So we just heard your bio. So impressed with what you do and what you're all about. And I just like to hear a little bit about your origin story, right? Because, really no athlete dreams of navigating the healthcare system, but when injuries hit, that support can, really make or break a career. So you built a business that really steps into that exact gap, making sure athletes, aren't alone in that, toughest moments. So what's the origin story here? How did you go from being an RN to founding a platform trusted by athletes and physicians all around the world?
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting story, yet maybe not as off as you would think it would be to get to, being a nurse and then, starting a sports health company. But I actually played collegiate ball. So obviously I had a massive love for sports. And I was super fortunate that I didn't have any injuries. However, that was obviously a very long time ago. And then chose the medical field to go into as a nurse. And I worked for about 5 years as a registered nurse in the neonatal intensive care unit, and then moved over to the operating room where I kind of fell in love with circulating and everything that meant. And orthopedics is really where I kind of fell into. And then strangely enough, as I was there, I kind of got picked up by a med device company to become a sales rep. So I did foot and ankle for Wright Medical for about 11 years before I decided to start my own distributorship. So then as I worked as a distributor for the last 5 or 6 years, one of the big trends that I noticed was some of our big surgeons that take care of a lot of professional athletes was the struggle that they had to formalize the second opinions or consultations that they were doing with these athletes. And I really saw it more from the medical side than I ever saw it from the athlete side, which was great. And then, but as you start delving into it, you realize that the athletes truly have a problem accessing the kind of care that they want or need, whether that's a 17-year-old wanting to go to college or that is a, 26, 27-year-old professional football player. So I found a lot of, just commonalities between, what we were doing in the healthcare as to what we were doing in sports med and combining the two, helping the physician formalize their second opinions and then helping the access for the athlete to actually get to the physician.
That's a great story, and it's so cool that you had so many paths after getting into healthcare, but what would you say initially pulled you to healthcare?
Really think just the desire to help people in general. I just always had this need to want to take care of people, and actually healthcare like has a certain a bit, obviously it's a lot of trauma. Um, and as a young 20, 25-year-old, when I was getting into that, that was a lot of fun. You hate for people to go, oh, yeah, trauma is fun, but it does kind of raise your blood pressure, get you excited. I always loved a good trauma coming in the door, but it was, really to the aspect of like helping people on the other side of that and just caring. Um, so it was a kind of a hard, I wouldn't say a hard transition for me, but it was kind of that thing of giving up, being a nurse to start into sales, was very different. So.
So you're a nurse, right? And then now you go into sales, which, usually is not the progression, right? So how do you go from nurse into sales? And then, of course, we'll get into the business side of it, but that's really a big step or a big change. How did you manage that change? And what was your essentially prompting or passion to get into sales?
Yeah, I think as being a nurse, and like I said, it's the thing of wanting to help people. And so in sales, like, if you go into sales like thinking that you're selling something, it's not, you're solving a problem. And so for me, it was always putting patient first. And, so if I had a product or I could solve a problem, then the sale already made itself. So for me, it was especially in med device, like going into sales was how do I use my nursing degree? I already knew the OR. I already knew the background of, don't touch this, don't go here. It was more of just like obviously learning the products, learning my physicians, the territory, and then going in and just helping them, being a support system. So for me, that was actually a very easy transition to, go from nursing right into sales. So,
Let me double down on that because,
yeah.
we always say in sales, you have to be passionate about what you're selling. Or you always say also is like sales people are really storytellers, right? We're solving problems, but we're also telling stories. So I think it's great to your point because you can relate to the people you're talking to because you've lived it and you can just share your own story about why you think this offering tool product, whatever it is, would work because you were on the other side of the aisle as as someone you potentially using that technology, using that tool or using that service. So did that help you a lot when it came to getting passionate about what you were selling because you were in the front of the lines before?
Absolutely. It's a lot of times you have sales reps, especially in med device, that are pushing products that number one is not warranted for, the situation or what's going on. Um, but they've got to hit that quota, they've got to hit the sales number. So it's like, yeah, doc, go ahead and put that in. I always knew it was kind of the long sale that I wanted. So if you became a trusted person within the OR because you're there for the right reasons, you're there for the patient, it wasn't about the product. And frankly, there's was a few times I'd be like, I actually don't think you should use anything. Um, and that always gained trust for me. And it helped me, retain my position in the OR and the physician going, hey, I want you in here because you also know as a nurse on the other side what your patient's going to be suffering, through. It's the, if you're doing the wrong procedure or you're using the wrong products, you don't have a good result when they come back into the physician's office. They also know it's their expectation, what's going on with the patient. So if you know that as a sales rep and you're standing in the OR, you become even more valuable to that physician and what's happening, and you're always going to be in there. They're always going to want you.
With all these complexities in the healthcare systems, was there ever a moment early on that you felt like you wanted to walk away, or like it really was like, I need to build something better?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that drives me absolutely crazy about the healthcare system today, especially in med device, is the lack of control that I think sales reps and even, for instance, physicians have. It's so absolutely frustrating. It's, the uh, administration that can tell you what products can come in or whatnot, what's best for the patient. I'm like, well, I mean, apples to oranges, or, we're selling the same apple. It's just, has a different brand on it. Why is my product approved and theirs is not, or, vice versa? I think that's absolutely right now in healthcare. One of the most frustrating things is, um, and I get, the frustration behind, just anybody coming in and dropping their product, making sure that it's a great product, or it is FDA approved. I mean, it's all the things you have to, jump through hoops. But I think the most frustrating thing is the physician not having control over what they're doing. And we see that obviously in all areas. And that's kind of with sideline surgeons, it was somewhat of what I noticed was the physician wasn't in control of what they were doing. And that's part of that, doing second opinions or consultations, without getting reimbursed, for that time that they were doing it, not formalizing it with documentation because there wasn't actually a system out there for, for them to do that. So for me, solving that problem kind of almost, I wouldn't say fell in my lap, but I just started seeing the connection pieces to that around the country with a lot of physicians that I worked with. So that was an easy thing for me to go, hey, there's a problem. I want to solve it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just posted today about how not all individual contributors in sales should be a manager, right? A lot of people think, oh, I'm a great salesperson, so the next promotion for me is leading people. And it's not a promotion, it's a totally different job. And you're doing it at a whole nother level because you're building your own company, right? Which is all about leading clients as well as leading people. So what are your thoughts on that from transitioning to a seller, individual contributor, to then going out and building a business where you're actually leading a group of people? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard transition, but I think the one thing that I feel like I know is that I know what my strengths are. And then if you're going to lead a team, it's not necessarily leading people to do what you're doing. It's helping people lead themselves in what they're good at. And everybody getting to the same, point, and you're all coming in on different roads and everybody has a different road, but if you all are moving in the same direction, it's like I don't necessarily belong in your car on your road, but if you see me across the street and you're waving at me and we're all going the same place, that's encouragement. So I just know for myself that I may not be this person that specializes in this, but I think it's being a good leader is finding somebody else that's good at doing that and then just motivating them to use their skills and, to be the special person that they are to like get to the end with you.
Yeah. And you've said before, you're not just connecting systems, you're connecting people. And I work a lot of the time with our partners, and it's really cool to build out those programs. What does that look like for you and your work?
Yeah, connecting the people with what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of first of all sports. I mean, how much more fun can you get like working with athletes and it's I love going to games. I love doing that stuff and we connect people with physicians that they want to see. Um we have athletic trainers. I get phone calls all the time, from performance people, from product, hey, can we be a part of what you're doing, the movement, uh, you know, but the reality is like when we connect people, we empower people as well. So empowering people to take control over their own healthcare, whether that's in sports or, I mean, and obviously it's the things that are happening right now, like in the NIL as well. It's them getting control back up, about the money that's coming in. They should have control over their healthcare, who they want to see. Um, it's not that they don't have great healthcare within a lot of the schools or, obviously the professional teams, but when it's you get the choice, it's so much better.
Yeah, I love the analogy too, with the other question before about driving and you're going in the same direction. I guess to add to that, like you have all these different vehicles, right? And people have their own taste. They have their own color. They have their own trim. And they like maybe a convertible, maybe like a truck. To your point, they're all different, but they're all driving on the same highway, and that's the point. So with that being said, building the business, especially in the beginning stages. I mean, our show is called "Do Hard Things," so let's double down on that phrase for a second. Sometimes you're in a traffic jam, right? To go back to the analogy, especially you're in gridlock or there's people going 15 different ways, or maybe the red light is not working right now. So everyone's trying to figure out like, oh, do I go? Do you go? Do I go? Do you go? Right. So take me through maybe a story or two, a point where there was a moment in that beginning stages where everything felt like it was just falling apart, but it turned into a breakthrough. Do you have something there?
Yeah, when here's the craziest story. It's when I started this. You see the problem, you start having the conversation with, "Hey, is this a company? Is this like a thing? Is this something I should do?" Because what I've gotten is, "You're a middle-aged woman in the middle of Kansas. How did you start this?" And part of it was just like putting myself in positions and places to get to know people that were in companies that were higher up, which led me to, meeting a lot of these physicians and figuring out what their problem was. Um, I knew one of the biggest issues I was going to be have is hurting the cats, which is the physicians. They all do what they wanna do, and they're going wherever they wanna go. Was trying to get them to understand what the problem was. And I kept saying, "Somebody's going to get sued. This is gonna happen." And by golly, it did happen. There was a massive, like, major lawsuit. I won't go into it, you can look it up. But an Eagles player sued a team physician for a significant amount of money, wrapped up a couple hospitals, and by golly, my phone just rang off the hook. Um, so for a long time, for probably the first year of trying to convince physicians that were, doing these type of consultations where they needed to formalize, they needed to document what they were doing, and then for that to happen was a breakthrough. But, like, before that, it was, like, that gridlock, the stop, and finally, you know, I would never wish anybody to be sued the way that that happened or how it came down. W Either side that you're on, whether it was the player or, the physician, it caused a lot of issues. Now it opened up our door to say, "Look, we actually are solving your problem. This is what we're doing." Um, so that was huge. Then the next part is, how do we put a system in place where there's never been one, and that's really kind of where we are now, where we're not gridlocked, but we're changing how people have done this always. So it's like it's a brand new, if you want to call it a product, a new platform, but it is trying to convince people not just in healthcare, but sports and sports agencies, athletic trainer, like you name it, that we're doing this a different way. The landscape has changed. And a lot of it is just technology never caught up with how the physicians were treating athletes and vice versa. So we had a lot of disorganization within that. So really it's pulling it together, but it does take a while to do that. So we're slowly paddling down that river.
So you work with multiple companies, lead a national physicians network. What keeps you showing up for this work?
It's actually a lot of fun. It's challenging, which I really like. More challenging on some days than I would prefer. But I think it's the thing that even if I wanted to quit, a door would always open. So I've always just gone through, it's like I was either gonna like walk through it or I was gonna get kicked through it, one or the other. Um, and now it's just like doing hard things is actually just kind of that thing that like kind of excites me, and, like, when I get over that hurdle, I'm like, "Man, I really, really did a really difficult thing," and I get, more proud of myself and, you know, building the company off of, like, really truly a difficult, problem has been very gratifying personally, for me, but, it's truly, just when you show up every day and you do it and you realize people are relying on you and there's you're really making a change and the way that things are happening and we're changing a movement, it actually really makes me proud of like what we're doing.
Yeah, speaking of being proud, I mean, it's kind of impressive, right? There's not many people that are working in the pros and these high-end sports athletes. I mean, you're going from high school all the way to the pros, and they're going through injury, and you're seeing them, bounce back. And these are people who are at the top of their game. Does that rub off? Like, how do you feel about like working in that space where, you're working with people who are striving for excellence physically all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you strip it down to like the basics with a person, right? If you take the most professional athlete that, is making millions of dollars, in a year, there's still people that stress over, their jobs. Like, especially an injury for them. It is literally the thing that can, without sounding too cheesy, sideline them. Um, but that truly is their career and it's the change. And if we look at them as actual people, instead of like this is a professional athlete, they have the same anxieties and worries and everything else. So as a company, if we can be there for them and say like, hey, we get it. We're treating you like you want to be treated. We giving you the best care. We're giving you instant access to the people that you want. You get a good turnaround on your, consultation. Um, they appreciate being obviously treated special. Um, and they deserve to be treated special. Just like everybody else does. We care about even the 11-year-old maybe that's on the field as a pitcher that, is their elbows hurting. How do we treat that athlete as well? Because you never know where that kid's going to be. Um, but I think it's just knowing that as a company, we want that patient to um, continue to return, to continue to use our service. But it is a lot of fun to be, obviously dealing with the pros. My issue now is when somebody gets hurt, somebody calls me and asks me if so and so's treated them. And I'm like, I can't tell you that.
That's really cool, and I'd love to go off of that. So growing up, I did all-star cheerleading, and when injuries would happen to me or others on the team, for some of them, it could just end their career. What's the hardest part about caring for athletes that people on the outside really don't see?
Yeah, I think it's the reality of like really how many hours that they practice and they put into this and really how much it means to them. I mean, I'm sure like see how many hours you spent in the gym tumbling or you do things and it takes this fraction of a second to get injured. Which could either, sideline you or, end your career altogether. And then what do you do? Um, so I think, a lot of it is, just making sure we keep that in mind, for the player and the patient that, this is when they're injured, it's, a really difficult place to be or to turn. And, making sure they get back to their full ability. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're a CEO, you're a founder, uber successful. You're also a parent, right? Being a mom, I, I'm a dad, and I can tell you, like I always say, like your why has to make you cry, right? And just being a parent has been able to one drive my motivation, but it also has helped me with leadership and care and really what really matters. So how has that shaped, your ability to lead people, lead your company, and build a business also while building a family?
Yeah. Obviously being a female and having kids and, all that thing. And I have a 19-year-old daughter and she is amazing. She's actually wants to be a dentist. I might have tried to talk her out of, doing healthcare, but that's okay. And she's doing great. But I think it's that thing of that does help you be a good leader. Like if you're a parent, it's wanting the people that work for you to succeed and that you're not doing everything for them. Not, it, sometimes it can be hard when you start a company to not be a micromanager and not wanting to do things for people. And I realize sometimes I have to kind of be quiet, which is very difficult for me, and step back and, let somebody else, again, drive your own car. It doesn't mean you're not driving alongside with them, but it is definitely just that thing of wanting them to be successful because if somebody's not happy or they're not successful even in the job that they're working for you, they're probably going to leave. So I think that's a lot of like, how do you keep good people around and good people around you is by making them feel important and making them feel like, they have a future just like we do with our kids. So, there's a lot of correlation that, when you have a company, you have a family too.
Right.
Of that. I'd love to take a little bit of a shift here. So we're sitting on a podcast. How do you see content really working out in your space, and what are you guys doing right now?
Yeah, so I obviously really got on LinkedIn a little bit when, I first became a sales rep because that's what you did. Everybody gets on and you put your little picture and this is what I do, and then you don't touch it. And it, for all intents purposes, it becomes dust. And as I started, networking and really realizing I needed to utilize a platform like LinkedIn, getting connected with people, like making people aware. I think especially when you're starting a company, branding to the right people, discussing with, other people that are, in your space, founders, whatever you're, putting information out. And I obviously never take myself too seriously. If you've ever looked at my LinkedIn, um, that is kind of how I am in the life as well. So I think it's the reality of like, we do have a lot of fun content. We're going to have even more, like content that's beyond as we, continue to grow as a company. And I always joke that I started this company so I can go to as many professional games as possible. It's one thing I like to do. So it's like, oh, hey, every time you go to a game, we can post this on LinkedIn or Instagram or social media. Um, it's a powerful tool, especially LinkedIn is that thing that I don't think people utilize it enough for sure. As far as like getting free content to help grow and, build your company and make, amazing connections with people. So
Yeah, I want to double down on that too because, part of what we do is we do these things and we do content for founders and CEOs like yourself. So my biggest thing is, what do you think is stopping people and why do you think founder-led, CEO-led marketing or CEO-led social marketing is so important right now? Because we believe in everything you just said, but at the end of the day, I feel like there's still a blocker. So for the founders and the CEOs who are on this podcast in our audience right now, we're thinking about, hey, should I do that? What do you think is stopping them, or maybe what stopped you from getting, onto the train here of creating content, and maybe a one or two reasons on why or where you've seen that success in reality?
yeah, I think, like with any company, um, companies are, who's the brand of the company? Oftentimes it is the CEO. I mean, you look at Apple, who the person was, who the CEO, it was Steve Jobs. Like you recognized him by a black tank top. There was obviously some other people that, copied that. Um, and so especially in a world where we're all starting to use AI more and more, not knowing what's real content, what's really not, it's nice to know that there are people out there leading companies, and they're real people and they have real lives and they do real things. I think crazy enough, we had uploaded, Sideline Surgeon's LinkedIn page. It got some followers, it had some stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna start my own LinkedIn page. And then that took off. And so it's the correlation between it's like you can have a company, it can be as amazing as it wants to be. But if it's people just bypass a company page, and I do it, um, people stop people. So it's being who we are, being real, and having real content, I think is really what people want, whether they know that's what they want or not. And so it's like, how do our CEOs and founders, lead their companies better is like being real people and being out there. If you're leading, you should be out front. So you should be the face of the company. Um, you can step back. You don't have to be, you can be the marketing person, you can be this, but when it really stops. Like when you go to a national sales meeting, the person that you want to hear from is the leader of the company. Um, and I think that's pretty true, with most people. It's like you love a company, but you're in love with the people that are there. So yeah.
Yeah, and we totally agree. So I love that we ended on that. Stacy, thank you so much for your time today. Who is the best person that should reach out to you, and where should they?
Yeah. if you're an athlete, if you're a weekend warrior, I actually got that question this week, is like, can only athletes access your information? I'm like, absolutely not. We want the golfers. We want people playing tennis. We want, whoever you are, if you want to get on, there's a space for that on our platform. We're at sidelinesurgeons.com. You can obviously access me through, Stacy Case on LinkedIn, and obviously our Sideline Surgeons LinkedIn page as well. But, feel free to message us, and we'll get right back to anybody.
Thank you, Stacy, so much for joining us on the show. We're super big fans of yours, and we appreciate all that you do for the industry. So keep rocking and rolling, and thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.